Episode 1 of Spider-Noir begins with narration by Ben Reilly, describing how he grew up in New York City and became the Spider, a superhero who protected the city's people. He then moves on to talk about the woman he loved, a girl called Ruby, who told him that great power comes with great responsibility. But then she died and he believed the Spider failed her. He puts his mask away and went back to living an ordinary life. Now 5 years have passed and Ben chases a man named Addison. Along the way, a third man joins the chase and knocks Ben down. The man confronts Addison, who conjures two balls of flames in his palms. The man shoots Addison, who falls and sets off a nearby container of gas. Ben pulls the other man out of harm's way and goes through his wallet to find that he is also a private investigator, a man named Patrick Donegal. When Donegal wakes up, Ben realises they were both hired by a man named Winston. Ben returns to his office here, where he tells his assistant Janet that Addison is dead. He then gets a visit from a man named Mr. Carmody, who wants Ben to investigate his wife's affair. He gives Ben a picture of his wife and an address where she plans on meeting her lover. At a diner, Ben meets his friend Robbie, who is also a journalist. Robbie talks about Silvermane, a powerful man, whose real name is Finn Byrne, who has been controlling New York for a while now and even has the police in his pocket. Recently, someone burned Silvermane's mansion down, but the old man survived. Robbie claims that the city needs a hero, but Ben refuses to hear about it. Ben arranges a meeting with Donegal and tells him they should find out more about Winston, the person who hired them to get Addison. That night, Ben spots Carmody's wife heading to the penthouse of a high-rise building called the Red Cliff. He uses a fire escape to get onto the balcony and spy on her. He sees her arguing with a man, but soon that very man tries to assault the woman. Unable to stop himself, Ben uses his spiderweb to stop the man and give the woman a chance to escape. The next day, Winston turns up at Ben's office and demands to know where Addison is. Ben asks for more money and tells Winston to relay this to his bosses. As Winston leaves Ben's office, he and Donegal follow him. They soon find that Winston works for Silvermane. Donegal thinks this is a golden opportunity to extort Silvermane for information about Addison, but Ben thinks it's way too dangerous. Back in the office, Janet develops the photos Ben took, and they realise that the man Carmody's wife was with is none other than the mayor of New York City. When Carmody arrives, Ben tells him that his wife is loyal and spent the night alone in the hotel. Ben also deduces that a woman would not be Carmody's wife at all. Instead, Carmody may have been hired by someone who wants to take the mayor down. In the meantime, Ben also keeps getting spasms around the back of his head and neck, which Janet refers to as his sixth sense thing. Since they're not charging Carmody either, Janet suggests they blackmail the woman in the photographs for money instead. Ben meets Robbie again and shows him the photograph of the woman from his case. Robbie recognises her as Kat Hardy, a once famous singer who now works at a place called The Alcove. Since they're meeting at a hospital, Robbie shows Ben the dead body he has come to write about. That body is none other than James Addison, and that means Silvermane will know soon enough that he's dead. Ben now worries about Donegal. He leaves a message for Donegal and then heads to the alcove, where he gets mesmerised watching Kat perform. On another table, he spots Silvermane sitting there. Winston enters the bar and calls Silvermane out, and they go to an underground basement where Silvermane's people have been torturing poor Donegal. Silvermane questions him about Addison and asks him who hired Addison to kill Silvermane, and it turns out Addison may have actually set fire to Silvermane's mansion beforehand. When Donegal insists he doesn't know, Silvermane kills him. At the bar, Ben approaches Kat and shows her the pictures. He suggests meeting for lunch the next day to discuss the price of the negatives. As he leaves, Kat's bodyguard Flint follows Ben to the top of an unused building. When Ben refuses to give him the negatives, they wind up fighting. Ben knocks him down, but Flint recovers as his skin starts to change, and it turns out he's made of sand. Yep, it's the Sandman. He drops Ben off the roof, but Ben uses his spiderwebs to swing back up. He knocks Flint down again, and this time Kat rushes in and asks Ben not to hurt him. Ben gives her the negatives for free and then leaves. The next morning, Janet is packing up her things because of Ben's refusal to charge Kat money. At that moment, Kat enters the office and tells Ben she wants to hire him to find Flint. It turns out he's gone missing. Episode 2 of Spider-Noir begins with Kat Hardy hiring Ben to find Flint. She says the sand phenomenon started happening around 6 months ago, but she doesn't know why. After she leaves, Ben and Janet agree that Kat is hiding something. Not on a fancy rooftop somewhere, Silvermane tells Winston he has a meeting at the docks. Winston, who's obviously a bodyguard, cautions him since someone recently tried to kill him. Silvermane orders him to find Flint, as well as Ben. Elsewhere, Robbie makes a phone call and asks to meet a man named Walters about a job. Robbie says he has a huge story in the works. Ben begins his investigation by going to Flint's house, where he finds an old wartime photograph of soldiers in which Ben recognises both Flint and Addison. At that moment, Winston arrives and Ben hides in the closet while he looks around. Meanwhile, Janet visits a Bureau of Crime Records and bribes a policeman named Hank with some food in order to get information on Flint Marko. Back at the office, she tells Ben that Flint has a long rap sheet, starting with petty crime and ending as an enforcer for Silvermane. Ben meets Kat at the alcove and confronts her about not telling him that Flint was working for Silvermane. She says she thought he wouldn't take the case if he knew the truth. She admits that Silvermane owns the alcove and he agrees to keep working the case anyway. As he's leaving, we see that Flint is on the rooftop across the road watching Kat. Now when Ben gets home, he gets accosted by 2 men who drag him into a car to go and see Silvermane. On the way, Ben manages to escape from the car and hide under a bridge. In the morning, Ben and Robbie watch Mayor Morris's speech for his re-election. Ben warns Robbie to stay off the Addison story, but Robbie says he needs the money. Elsewhere, Silvermane tells Winston to go to the docks and scope the place out before his meeting with some new Canadian suppliers. And Robbie goes to Addison's house to look for his widow, and whilst there he meets one of Addison's friends who says that Addison had a sickness. The friend directs Robbie to the Jeffrey Hotel to find Addison's wife. At Ben's office, Silvermane's thugs arrive looking for Ben and threaten Janet's life. Ben goes in after they've gone and tries to comfort Janet, but she's had enough and says she will be quitting her job. After this, Ben takes on the disguise of a plumber and goes to a young couple's apartment, presumably his own old apartment, where he smashes a hole in the bathroom wall and takes out a briefcase which has the spider's mask. At the Jeffrey Hotel, Robbie meets Addison's wife. She admits that Addison started intentionally setting fire 6 months ago, but she doesn't reveal who hired him to kill Silvermane. Meanwhile, Addison's friends meet Flint at a rundown theatre and tell him that Addison is now dead. They both talk about their sicknesses and how it's getting worse. At the docks, Winston checks the Canadian shipment and gives Silvermane the all clear to come down. As he's driving down, the spider arrives and makes quick work of all of Silvermane's people. He then tells Silvermane that Ben doesn't know who hired Addison and warns him to leave Ben and the people around him alone. That night, Robbie calls Ben and tells him that the cops have set a trap for Silvermane. Now, a lot of his men have been rounded up, but thanks to Ben's intervention, Silvermane didn't get caught with them. Ben is shaken as he thinks about what he's done. Episode 3 of Spider-Noir begins with Janet returning to work now that Ben has sorted things out with Silvermane. While there, Robbie recognises Addison's friend in the wartime photo of Addison and Flint. Robbie heads out to find him again, while Ben tells Janet to check if the friend, Flint, and Addison were all prisoners of war. They couldn't have been in the same unit since those were segregated by race. The pair then get a surprise visit from Silvermane himself. He hires Ben to find out who ratted him out to the police and gives him a bundle of cash as a retainer. Examining them, Ben realises that Silvermane marks all of the bills he uses. Now, the colour version of the show portrays this as a red dot, which is a bit harder to see in the black and white version. Ben heads to the hospital to meet the policeman injured in the previous night's raid at the docks. After pretending to be from a form of labour union, Ben questions all the officers and realises the order for the raid came from none other than Mayor Morris. Robbie continues to look for Addison's friend here, whose name we learn is Lonnie. While he's searching through the ramshackle residencies, the police suddenly arrive to clear out the illegal camps. During the chaos, Lonnie's super strength is revealed as he and Flint take a stand against the police. Robbie captures it all on his camera. Elsewhere, Ben finds Carmody's location and questions him. Carmody says nobody hired him, he wanted the photos for himself but couldn't do it because of a leg injury. He also reveals that it was Kat who wanted to meet the mayor, not the other way round. While in his apartment, Ben's sixth sense tingles and he sees Winston waiting in a car outside. He takes the back way out and drops by Kat's place, giving her an update on the Silvermane situation. He tries to find out if her meeting with the mayor had anything to do with the raid, but she keeps things suitably vague. Ben then crosses paths with Winston and offers to share information about the rat in exchange for money. Winston gives him a few notes, on which Ben notices Silvermane's mark, although in a different spot this time. When he returns to his office, Robbie tells him and Janet about Lonnie and his powers. Janet has also found out that Lonnie, Addison and Flint were all POWs. The photo was taken on the day they were rescued. Ben takes Robbie aside to talk, where Robbie asks Ben what he's hiding, but he says he can't get into it. He believes Kat is the person who ratted Silvermane out to the mayor and is worried she'll be killed. After this, Ben heads out to meet Addison's wife, Vera. He asks her if Kat hired Addison, and her reaction confirms it. However, she realises he wants to protect Kat and asks for $1,000 to keep quiet about it. Ben then meets Silvermane at his penthouse residence in a towering hotel and tells him he's nearly caught the rat, but he's currently looking for proof. On his way out, Ben places a bit of spiderweb over the balcony door's locks. Robbie meets Howard Walters next, the editor-in-chief at the Daily Bugle, and offers his article on Lonnie, Flint and their superpowers. Walters is happy to take the article on, but doesn't offer Robbie his full-time job back just yet. That night, Ben commissions Frankie, a local orphan boy, to pretend to be him inside his office. So while Silvermane's thugs believe they're seeing Ben's silhouette inside his office, the real Ben wears his mask and sneaks into Silvermane's apartment. With some help from his spider senses, Ben unlocks the safe and removes $1,000. Before he can escape, a gust of wind bangs the balcony door. Silvermane awakens and calls for his bodyguards, who can't find anybody, because the spider is hiding on the ceiling. Elsewhere, Kat returns to her apartment to find Flint waiting for her. They embrace and we learn that they aren't just singer and bodyguard, they actually are in love. Flint even agrees to run away with her, but he suddenly turns to sand. Bemoaning his condition, he runs away again. In the morning, Robbie is furious to see that Walters has turned his article around by painting Lonnie and Flint as monsters and the police as heroes. Ben heads back to Jeffrey Hotel and gives Vera her money, and as promised she starts packing a bag. Unfortunately, Winston and his colleague end up seeing this. Ben calls Kat from a payphone and tells her to stay put because he wants to meet her. Before he can go though, a couple of men block his path and say the mayor wants to see him. And Mayor Morris tells Ben he wants to speak to the spider because crime rates have been increasing in the city and he no longer wants to work with Silvermane. By the time Ben gets back to see Kat, he learns that she's taken a taxi to the train station. Ben rushes to the station to talk to Kat, but she denies being a rat. Unfortunately, Winston and his people arrive as well and take both of them to a spot in the woods to see Silvermane. Vera is there as well, and Winston makes her show Silvermane the cash that she's got. He notices his mark on the notes, the same mark he put on the cash he pays to Winston. Courtesy of Ben of course, but nobody else knows that. Silvermane assumes Winston was the rat and Vera confirms it, and so he shoots Winston dead. However, that's not the end of it. He tells Ben they will need 2 graves and then fires another shot. Episode 4 of Spider-Noir begins with Silvermane and Ben sharing a table at the alcove while Kat sings a song for everyone. A flashback reveals that the second gunshot from the previous episode was for Gio, Winston's colleague. After her song, Kat makes small talk with both of them but breaks down when she goes to her room. After a long night of drinking with Silvermane, Ben turns up hungover at the office where Janet and Robbie are waiting for him. Robbie soon heads out to Harlem to look for Lonnie. A Kat gets a visit from Silvermane, who asks her to explain what she was doing at the train station. She says she was terrified because of his unhinged behaviour and wanted to run away. She also explains that Ben wasn't with her, he was watching her on Silvermane's behalf because he thought she might be working with Winston. Now at the office, Janet gets a call from Kat. She sends Frankie with the message and he shows up at Ben's house to say that Kat wants to meet him. Back in his lavish apartment, Silvermane gets angry when the chief of police doesn't show up for his weekly meeting. Ben meets Kat at a restaurant next, where she relates her conversation with Silvermane. They get their story straight so that Silvermane can't find any holes in them. Ben then asks her why she tried to get Silvermane killed. A Kat takes Ben to her old theatre, where they talk in private. She explains how Silvermane saw her there and made a deal to give her everything she wanted, but she didn't realise it came with strings attached. Then she fell in love with a man named Thomas, but after they got engaged, Silvermane had Thomas killed. Despite that, when Kat fell for Flint, she thought they could have a fresh start if Silvermane wasn't in the picture. She had heard of Addison through Flint and offered him good money to kill Silvermane. At this point, Flint enters the theatre and overhears the conversation. Furious after hearing Kat's confession, goes back to Silvermane's place. Silvermane tells him about Winston being the rat, but Flint doesn't say anything about Kat. On their way back, Kat tells Ben she doesn't want to be alone that night. He takes her home and they have a drink while Ben talks about Ruby. He explains how a man he put in jail for 5 years came out and took his revenge by killing Ruby. The night she was killed, he was getting drunk in a bar across town and ended up being too late to save her. Robbie brings Lonnie back to Ben's office, but he doesn't seem keen on opening up. Janet pulls out a pack of playing cards and the games do help him to loosen up. Eventually he opens up about what the Germans did to him and the POWs. He tells the other two to talk to someone called Dr. Faber. Silvermane decides to confront the Chief of Police and Mayor Morris here, who are currently having dinner at a club. Morris and Silvermane exchange barbs, with neither agreeing to back down. Meanwhile, Ben and Kat get cozy in his apartment. He's about to kiss her when the radio announces a citywide alert about a monster terrorising the people in the Diamond District. Kat, thinking it's Flint, rushes to go and help. Ben tells her to go on her own, letting her believe that he's a coward. When the mayor and chief of police hear about the chaos, they realise Silvermane has made his first move. The Spider shows up at the Diamond District and realises that the superpower person isn't Flint. It's an unknown man who can shoot lightning out of his hands. Even though the Spider doesn't want to fight him, the man starts attacking. After a rough fight, the man runs out of juice and the Spider knocks him out. Everyone cheers and the mayor takes pictures with him, making it look like they're a team. Kat, who was at the scene of the fight and felt something familiar in the Spider, returns to Ben's house and confronts him about his secret identity. In the end, she throws herself out the window to provoke him. This works as Ben uses his spider webs to catch her, and when he brings her back up, they wind up kissing. Episode 5 of Spider-Noir begins with Ben and Kat going to a diner. Kat asks him to tell her his story, and Ben starts with the war. Now, flashback shows that Ben was part of a unit sent to liberate an Eastern European town from the Germans. In the process, they came across POWs who the Germans were experimenting on using animals and genetic mutations. One of the patients, who had turned into a part human, part spider mutant, bit Ben on the arm, leaving him woozy afterwards. The flashback also shows Addison and the others taking a photograph in the background as Ben struggles to stay conscious. At present, Ben says he had to learn how to be human again. He admits he was interested in Flint's case because he wanted to know if something gave them both their powers, maybe that something could also take it away. Ever since Ruby's death, he's wanted to go back to being Ben Reilly. At the Daily Bugle, Robbie presents a new article to Walters about the Spider defeating the man with the electricity. He allows Walters to publish the story on a few conditions. He publish it without any changes, he publish a retraction of the story about Lonnie and Flint, and he gives Robbie his old desk back. Flint then meets Lonnie and tells him that Silvermane has a position for him as well. Lonnie refuses, but Flint convinces him to think about it. Ben, Robbie and Janet convene in the office, where Janet and Robbie tell Ben that everyone's superpowers started showing up after they met with a doctor named Alethea Faber. It turns out she knew about the German POW camp and sought out all those who were imprisoned there. Now, Kat and Silvermane are in the alcove when Flint and Lonnie arrive. Kat is shocked, but retains her calm even as Flint tells Silvermane that he will not let anyone hurt him. As she leaves the men to talk business, Silvermane tells her to look for a new band and a younger singer. Robbie goes to a hospital in Queens and asks to speak to Dr. Faber. He confronts her, alongside her secretary Ogden, about the 4 men in her care who turned out to have superpowers, but only after her treatment. She gets angry and tells him that there is a reason for everything she does. In the meantime, Ben sneaks into Faber's office and snoops around. He finds a hidden compartment with a bunch of files in it, and just then Faber and Ogden return to the office. Ben pretends to be a lost patient and gets away, but not before Ogden recognises him as one of the men in France. That night, Flint and Lonnie barge into the police station and make their way to the Lightning Man, Mr. Layden. They pave a way for Silvermane to meet Layden, where he offers Layden a place on his team. Layden accepts and they break him out of his chains. And meanwhile, Ben and Robbie return to the former's office and discuss how Faber wanted to save the men but just ended up triggering latent mutations. Ben asks Robbie to let him tell Kat the truth about Flint before he prints the story. Robbie gives him a day. Ben then gets a call from Silvermane, so Ben goes to see him and sees that Silvermane is backed by Flint, Lonnie and Layden. Silvermane asks Ben to tell the Spider to stay out of the war between him and the mayor, and Ben reluctantly agrees. As he's leaving, Flint tells him that he knows the truth about Kat and is only giving Ben one pass because he saved her. Ben visits Kat and tells her that Flint could be getting closer to death every time he uses his powers. She takes the news hard and asks him to leave. Ben then tells her that Ruby and Flint are both ghosts, while he and Kat could actually have a chance at something real. He brings up her dream to go to Santorini and says they should run away together, and she eventually agrees. Afterwards, he and Janet go for breakfast and she realises something is up. He tells her about his plans with Kat and she says she's really happy for him. Meanwhile, Lonnie goes to Kat for help regarding Flint, whose condition is visibly getting worse. She goes to their hideout and the two have an argument. Flint says he would have killed Silvermane for her, but she never took a chance on him. He then storms off and Kat asks Lonnie if there's no chance to save them. He says that Dr. Faber mentioned there was only one thing left to try, the Spider. She thinks its mutation is more stable and could hold the answer to the cure for the others. Now at the hospital, Faber and Ogden are packing up their things and leaving when Kat arrives. She asks Faber if she will promise not to hurt the Spider, in the process of helping Flint and the others. Faber agrees and Kat gives in. She tells Faber that Ben Reilly is the Spider. Episode 6 of Spider-Noir begins with Ben packing up his things, getting ready to leave with Kat when someone knocks on his door. It's Ogden. He shows Ben a picture from the war, revealing that he was one of the young POWs alongside Flint and Addison. He says his mutation causes him to age at a much faster rate than usual. While he looks like an old man, he's actually only 36. Ben lets him inside for a drink, where Ogden reveals he knows Ben is a Spider and asks him to stop Robbie from publishing the article because it would stop Faber from saving Ogden's life. Ben refuses and also says that he's leaving town, leaving behind the identity of the Spider for good. As he's being led outside, Ogden injects Ben with something that makes him pass out. Dr. Faber and Ogden take the unconscious Ben to a secret lab where they handcuff him to a bed. Faber tells him she'll be running tests on him. Now flashback takes us back to the scene in France. After liberating the soldiers and getting bitten, Ben begins to struggle with the symptoms of the mutation. His limbs keep twitching and a spiderweb fluid leaks out of a cut on his wrist. The army doctors start conducting tests on him as well. At present, Faber tells Ben that she's not like those scientists who wanted to turn him into a weapon. Faber then reveals that Ogden is her son and that she will do whatever it takes to save him. She also reveals that it was Kat who gave Ben up. As she draws more of Ben's blood, he starts to lose consciousness. Sometime later, Faber enters the lab saying she's going to harvest Ben's genetic material. She and Ogden inject him with something else and take him to a surgery room. Ben goes through a series of vivid nightmares here and then awakens still tied to the gurney. While examining the material from Ben's liver, Faber sees mysterious glowing orbs. When mixed with the other mutants' blood, it seems to stabilise the mutation. She injects Ogden with a concoction and he returns to his younger self. The mother and son celebrate, and soon after Faber said they should start making their escape. Ogden realises she plans to kill Ben, since that's the only way the two of them won't end up rotting in jail. He takes the gun from her and says he'll do the deed himself. Meanwhile, Ben is able to loosen the straps around his wrist and use his spiderweb to get the keys to his handcuffs. He's on the verge of escaping when Ogden catches up. However, he puts his gun down and decides to save Ben's life, since Ben had saved his during the war. At the same time, Silvermane and his superpowered henchmen see Robbie's article and arrive at the lab to look for Faber. Silvermane wants a list of the superpowered people so that he can use them to build his own personal army. As they arrive, Ben and Ogden are forced to hide on the ceiling of the lift. Ogden shows Ben the way out and then heads back down for his mother. In the meantime, Silvermane tells Faber to take him to the other patients with superpowers. Instead, she leads him to a room filled with the dead remains of the other soldiers in a badly mutated state and preserved in glass jars. Of course, Flint, Lonnie and Layden are all furious, and Layden attacks Faber. Ogden jumps in to stop him, but both he and Faber get hit by Layden's electric bolts. One of them sparks a fire, and in the end both mother and son succumb to the fire as Silvermane and his men leave the premises. As for Ben, he takes his mask and clothes and also picks up the bottle of Faber's antidote, leaving the lab before everything turns to flames. Episode 7 of Spider-Noir begins with Kat agonising over her recent betrayal of Ben. Silvermane and his men enter the alcove where the boss laments about their useless trip to Faber's lab. Kat is surprised to hear they didn't find anything, and Silvermane then orders his 3 mutants to go forth and wreak havoc in the city and remind the mayor who's really in charge. Flint and Layden storm into one of Mayor Morris's offices and force the people there to show them where he keeps all his cash. They then load up their bags and leave. Kat goes to Ben's office and tells Janet that Ben stood her up. Janet quickly realises that he didn't stand her up, but that something is genuinely wrong. She calls Robbie for help and Kat takes her leave, asking Janet to let her know if he shows up. And Mayor Morris is furious when he realises all his money is gone. This time, even the chief of police throws his hands up, telling the mayor to call on the Spider. And where is Ben? Well, he's currently drinking his sorrows at a bar, lamenting over Kat's betrayal. Soon a group of men enter and start talking about how Flint and Layden were throwing cash into the air while telling the people to vote for Hudson, Morris's rival. They then start bad-mouthing the Spider, which really ticks Ben off. He leaves, puts his mask on and returns as a Spider, giving all the men a good thrashing, wrapping them up in spiderwebs. At that point, Robbie enters the bar after having searched for Ben all over the city and takes him away. Ben tells him he wants to take the antidote, mentioning that being the Spider used to feel good, but it doesn't anymore. Robbie tells him that there are more important things than him feeling good, reminding Ben that there's no reason he deserves the antidote more than Flint and Lonnie, who are actively dying. They return to the office next, where Ben accidentally reveals to Janet that he's the Spider. However, it turns out she actually already knew. A quick montage shows that Ben has told Janet he's the Spider many times during his drunken stupors. Flint shows up in Kat's house, offering a long monologue about how he fell in love with her, and she says that she's right here in front of him. But Flint can't get over how quickly that she's moved on with Ben. At the office, Ben divides the antidote into several different syringes. His plan is to inject the other supers with the antidote and then take one himself. He tells Janet that with no power comes no responsibility. Just then, news breaks about Silvermane's goons ransacking a police warehouse in Harlem. Ben dons the mask and the Spider heads over, engaging in a fight with Lonnie, but he winds up dropping the syringe. Robbie eventually stabs Lonnie with it and his body returns to normal. Finally realising the truth, Lonnie leaves along with Robbie and the Spider, who also took a bad beating from the police. While the Spider rests at Robbie's house, Lonnie leaves for a brighter future, planning on going somewhere far with his mother. In the end, both Silvermane and Mayor Morris learn about the Spider administering an antidote, and both of them demand their people find Ben Reilly. Episode 8 of Spider-Noir begins the finale in the alcove, with Silvermane telling Kat how it was only his courage and restlessness that got him from a poverty-stricken path to where he is now. He advises Kat not to be satisfied, but rather take what she wants. When he goes to the toilet, Kat calls Janet. They meet and Janet slaps her twice for her betrayal, but Kat says she wants to make up for it. She offers to inject Flint and Layden with the antidote herself since she can get close to them. Janet agrees to take the message to Ben. Flint and Layden currently happen to be in a car outside Ben's office, where Layden openly wonders why they are serving Silvermane when they have all the power. Janet returns to Ben's office next, where Frankie is waiting. He says that Ben is over at Robbie's place, and a phone call from Hank informs Janet that all the police precincts are looking for Ben. When Janet heads out again, Flint and Layden's car follows her. Janet relays Kat's offer to Ben, who thinks it might be a good idea. Layden and Flint turn up at the door and tell Ben that Silvermane wants to meet him. He agrees to go but isn't able to take the antidotes with him. When Silvermane tells Ben to call the Spider, Ben reminds him that a mayor is looking for him as well. Silvermane offers him money, and the negotiation ends at $2,000. Ben makes a call to Robbie's place, and Robbie pretends to be the Spider on the phone. Silvermane asks the Spider to meet him and bring the antidotes, and Robbie agrees. Ben tries to take his leave, but Silvermane will only pay him his money once the Spider actually shows up. Suddenly, Layden recognises Ben as a soldier who saved the POWs in France. Silvermane puts the dots together and openly wonders if Ben himself is the Spider. He decides to test it out by threatening to shoot Cat, an act that wouldn't bother the selfish private detective, but would get a reaction from the Spider. Ben tries to get ready to fight, but his powers aren't back yet. Cat makes a move instead, and she tells Silvermane the truth, not only that she broke Ben's heart and loves Flint, but also that she hired Addison and ratted Silvermane out to the mayor. Silvermane is about to kill Cat when suddenly the Spider shows up. Of course, it's just Robbie in the Spider's mask, but it's enough to convince Silvermane. Silvermane is asking the Spider to join him when his guards enter, having found Janet skulking outside. They also found the antidotes on her too. Layden takes the package and stabs Robbie with one of the syringes, and he then tests it out by shocking him with a bolt of electricity. Of course, Robbie collapses. Layden refuses to hand the antidote over to Silvermane and even encourages Flint to revolt against him. He is forced to do so since Layden removes the mask to reveal Robbie's face. At this point, Ben's powers return and he reveals himself. He uses his spiderwebs to take the antidote back, and then chaos ensues. Flint and Layden fight Ben, who dons the mask of the Spider once again. Now Silvermane does meet his fate though, and at the hands of Cat. While the supers fight each other, Cat grabs a gun and goes after Silvermane. She chases him through a room of mirrors, but ultimately manages to get a bullet in him. He says he's glad it was her in the end, while the supers' fight bleeds out onto the street. After fighting for a while, Ben is beaten up and Flint even rips part of his mask. Layden is about to kill him when Cat arrives threatening to shoot him. Unfortunately though, she is out of bullets. Layden shoots her with a bolt instead, which makes Flint turn on him. But sand can't fight lightning, and Flint is ultimately defeated. That's when the Spider gets up again. He pulls Layden back and throws him into the air, where a passing train takes him away in a shower of sparks. It's unclear at this point whether he's alive or dead. Now, Flint does survive because once Layden is gone, Ben gives Flint his last remaining syringe of the antidote. He then walks away while the people around him cheer for the Spider. Sometime later, Flint and Cat attend Silvermane's funeral. Ben is there as well, and he and Cat exchange a few more barbs before she leaves with Flint. In the end, Mayor Morris wins the election. Robbie starts his own newspaper called the Harlem Herald, and the detective business is now called Riley and Ruse, signifying Janet's promotion. As for Ben, he's happy to go get a nice hot dog. But as he's leaving, he uses his spiderwebs to grab his hat, which is perhaps a hint that he's far from being done with the Spider, which brings season 1 of Spider-Noir to a close. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.